This is Haley Holloway. I'm a librarian at RLB Library, and welcome to the second part of our tutorial of using the RLB Library's Primo search tool. Again, I'm going to keep my video off so there's nothing blocking the screen for this tutorial. In our first video, we focused on Primo's various features. So if you missed that, you can review it before or after this video. And in this video, I'm going to be covering some keyword strategies while using Primo. So in our previous video, I used community garden as a sample research topic, and I'm going to use that again to get a search started. And as we reviewed, signing in can be very beneficial for us. I'm just going to sign in very briefly to get those windows to kind of get out of the way for us. And when using keywords, it can be very beneficial to start your research very broad. So community garden is a very broad topic. It's not very specific. You can apply it in different contexts, different areas, things like that. But getting a search started that way can be very helpful, and it can give us a really good overview, a large picture of what exactly is out there. However, being too broad can make it difficult to sift through the number of results you can get. So we can see here we have over 700,000 results, which is way too many for any single person to review for any reason, any research assignment, things like that. And so a great way to really kind of narrow and customize your search is going to be playing around with your keywords. So the default in Primo is to use a simple search like this, so kind of the single search bar up here. We can expand that though by clicking this advanced search button to the right of that search bar. So when we open that up, we can see it gives us a lot more options of customizing that search. So one of the big things that you can do is use these operators to really tell the database much more specifically what you need, what you're looking for. So we're comparing the library's website, Primo, and the databases that we have. It is very different to searching using Google, right? So when we do a Google search, we can throw in a whole research question, a bunch of different words, and the data, and through Google's algorithm, it can really parse through all of that you've put into it and kind of make a guess about what you really need and what you're really searching for. Unfortunately, the library's databases are not quite that have those capabilities. So they're very, very literal thinkers. So very precisely what you put in is going to really, really impact what results you're able to get. So that's why those keywords are very, very important. So there's three main operators when you're using the library's databases, and those are and, or, and not. Personally, I've not had an occasion to use the not modifier. Kind of as the name suggests, you can use it to exclude anything, any word or phrase from your results. So if you're searching something and you just keep seeing a lot of things, a lot of phrases, maybe from a specific context that is a different context of what you're searching, you could use the not modifier to basically get those out of your search results. Again, I've never used not, but it is an option that is available for you. But really the big ones that you're probably going to use much more frequently are going to be and or. So when we're using these modifiers, we can use them in this drop-down field, and we can also put them in each of this search line as well. So I can also put them in here. I can put them down here. And again, because the databases are very literal thinkers, the order that you use these modifiers and the different lines that you use can sometimes make your results a little bit wonky. So sometimes it does take a little bit of trial and error to get a good combination of what works for you. I can show a little bit in a few minutes, kind of my go-to strategy for using these different fields and modifiers. But again, it will really come down to your individual preference, what your workflow looks like, how it feels, and finding what works best for you. So we're using the modifiers and or. First, let's look at and. So when we're looking at the and or modifier, we might kind of our initial perception is probably or possibly going to be a little bit different than what these modifiers actually do. So when we think of the and modifier, we think that it can be very inclusive, right? So I'm asking for this and also this and also this. So it's creating a bigger pool to pull from, but it's actually the opposite. So when you tell the database that you want something and also something, you're telling it that you want to include both of those things at the same time. So it can actually limit the number of search results that you're getting. So maybe I'm looking at community gardens and specifically a urban or city context. So I can add into the second line. Again, the default is and, so that's going to be what I'm telling it to do. I want to see community garden and urban. So if we remember, we had about 700,000 results. So if we add in the second keyword with the and modifier, let's see what we get. All right, we scroll down, we see that that really limited very significantly. So we're down to about 33,000 results. And then when we're looking at the or modifier, kind of similarly to and, we might think that or can be exclusive, right? So we have to choose between something or something else. But again, that's kind of the opposite. When we're telling the database we can see something or something or something, or is actually an expansive way to search in the database. And I like to think of or kind of as a way to include synonyms, similar phrases and things like that into our searching. So if I want to see city or I want to see urban or city, maybe I have there might be resources out there that use city instead of urban. So I can tell the database that these are similar enough keywords for me that I'm okay to see either one of them. And so with the current way that the keywords are set up here is the database can show me community garden and urban, or it can show me community garden and city. So by adding this or modifier, let's see again. So we're going to start with a little bit under 34,000 results if we search in here. And it jumped up to about 122,000 results. So again, kind of playing around with different keywords, different combinations can be very, very helpful for you. You can always add a third line or even one search lines beyond that. But I can advise going beyond search lines can be a little bit difficult just because the more and more requirements that you add onto your search can just make it more and more niche, more and more boxes that the database has to check. So going beyond these 3 lines can be very difficult. Even depending on your research topic, maybe there's not quite as much research available. So maybe just staying with 2 search lines is enough for you. Again, kind of coming back to that piece of playing around with it, really finding what works best for you, and really what works best for each reason that you're, using this database for different projects, different assignments, and things like that. And beyond the operators, there's are a few other modifiers you can kind of use, or a few other strategies that you can use in the library's databases. The first is going to be the quotation marks. So if I add quotation marks around community garden, basically what that tells the database is that I want to see that exact phrase, the words in that order. So kind of, again, the way I see the quotation marks is it kind of glues those two words together. I will say that databases have become a lot smarter since I was a student. They used to be, I felt, more necessary. So I maybe databases have gotten a little bit smarter in the years since I've been an undergrad student. So sometimes they might be helpful, but if we would scroll down through here, we can see most of the time that these data results that we have do have community gardens or community gardens in some place. But we can also see that sometimes it does highlight just the word garden by itself or just the word community by itself. So that is a way to kind of tell the database that we want to see that exact phrase, how it appears like that. So if we do another search, so again, we have about 122,000 results. If we search that, we'll see how much it affected. Okay, so we went down to 4,000 results or less than 5,000 results. So again, sometimes that can be helpful. Sometimes the quotation marks aren't always necessary, but it is an option that something that is not intuitive for a lot of searchers. So just to be aware of that as well. And just one last kind of way to play around with our keywords is going to be using an asterisk. So if I add the asterisk behind the word garden, I'm telling the database that I'm okay to see results that have any kind of ending of the word garden. So I could see garden, I could see gardens, I could see gardening, gardener, any kind of ending to this word. And you can do that with all of your words. So if I want to do the same thing with city, I could tell it that, okay, yes, I can see the word city or I can see the word cities. And the asterisk can also be really helpful if we're thinking of using words that have different spellings depending on the country that we're in. So a lot of words in the English language have different spelling, whether you're in the United States or you're in the United Kingdom, for example. So in the US, we might spell the word theater like this with the ER, but in the UK, they might see it spelled with just those two last letters swapped. So by just using the word theater or only using the word or depending on the spelling of how you spell it, we could instead just throw the asterisk at the end, and then we could avoid losing out on those words that are available. I'm just going to reset this a little bit and just keep the asterisk at the end of garden. And I'm going to remove the quotation marks. So we'll search that again. And then we can see we've jumped back up to about 131,000 results. So we can definitely see how even just doing small changes to our search phrases and the different operators that we use can vastly, vastly impact the types of results or the number of results that we're getting. So I hope this was a helpful overview of using keywords in Primo and library databases. And I hope you can join me for my next videos, or again, if you need to review a past video. But thank you so much for joining.